This is Pixelated Audio, and you're listening to Plus Alpha.
Welcome back to Pixelated Audio, a podcast focusing on game audio, its history, and the people behind it. We're your hosts. I'm Gene, and this is Brian.
Howdy ho. We've got a really fun soundtrack to dive into today from a shooter released in 1989 called Plus Alpha, developed and published by Jaleco.
Yeah, it is an overhead shooter similar to Twinbee. In fact, it's got a very similar cute-em-up style aesthetic. Other games like Raiden, 1942 and 43. It's a vertical shooter. It's a simple enough game. It was released originally in 1989, but it was recently re-released in 2020 on Nintendo Switch under the Arcade Archives, published by HAMSTER, which has done a lot of great work in re-releasing a lot of really, I wouldn't say obscure necessarily, but lesser known games. It's a really cool arcade compilation series.
Yeah, I think it's like $8 for this game too, which seems a little high, but also like
they do a really good job with the emulation.
Yeah,
though, I got to be honest.
They do a really good job. Yeah, so that track that brought us in, that bombastic fanfare, was Triumphal Return Overture, which is the title theme of Plus Alpha, composed by Tsukasa Tawada.
We talked about Tsukasa Tawada once or twice on the show, but he hasn't made too many regular appearances. I'm glad we've got an episode for his music, though.
Exactly. And, I still get Facebook posts and stuff from, things he's working on and stuff. So I see his name kind of more common than I guess we talk about him. So the game, it's, like Gene said, it's kind of a cute 'em up. It's more anime style, like shooter than something like Raiden. It's a lot more cute and fun, and but don't let its looks be deceiving. It's actually a really challenging game. The official quote here from Nintendo is, "To rescue the Seven Kingdoms from tyranny, the warrior girls, Celia and Rumi, set out on their fighter ships. Each of the three types of fighter ships has their own unique attacks, so you can switch between them as you battle in style," with an exclamation point. That's the game.
Yeah, I don't know that it did many firsts, because we were just talking about this right before. I think Twinbee was 1985, and there were plenty of other shooters that had switchable ships or ships with different properties, but this is fairly early for a game to combine those things. So I think that's kind of cool.
The graphics are just really well done. It plays well. There's sound effects. There's voice samples in there when you switch to the different girls, and it's pretty incredible for the time. And we have another track here. This is called Wind Dancer from Stage 1 Wind Country. All right, that was Wind Dancer, Stage 1 Wind Country from Plus Alpha, composed by Tsukasa Tawada.
You know what this reminds me of?
Sonic.
A little bit, but actually I was going to say more Phantasy Star 2. It has that Uwabo sound. It's a little bit city pop. It's a little bit,
I'm getting a really slowed down Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, Sonic came out in 91. And cheat code, man. The city pop was such a cheat code for writing BGM in the 80s.
Nice. Tsukasa Tawada. So yeah, we haven't talked about his career too much on the show. He's credited in this game as J.S. Tawada. He's a huge classical music geek. He really is. Like a lot of his pseudonyms are like JS or just Bach in general. And he really kind of fancies the classical piano and classical music style. He's a composer that's worked on a ton of game audio for Jaleco and Hyde, many of which were pretty low key, so he wasn't really that well known in the early years of his career. Much later, he got more notice from the mainstream crowd with some of the Pokemon game soundtracks like Pokemon Coliseum, Gale of Darkness, and Battle Revolution. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but several Japanese resources say that he helped found Nintendo's second-party Genius Sonority group in 2002 and was serving as their director in 2007 until 2007. So beyond just game audio, he's had huge influence on the game industry, and he's done some pretty incredible soundtracks.
Reminder, we always like to give special thanks to people that have made it this far, but I mean, he started in the late 80s and he is still working on games today. In 2023, he's got credits. So it is a tough industry to stay in. So, round of applause on your side. I'm not going to clap into the microphone, but really.
He's done so much stuff. I mean, a few here for the NES: Druid, Maniac Mansion, Wampum, Moon Crystal, Arcade, this game, Rodland, Earth Defense Force, did Fortified Zone for the Game Boy, Dungeon Master and Ihatovo Monogatari, and Mech Warrior, Dragon Warrior 3, sound design on that. And like Gene said, he's still active in game audio as a freelancer. Since 2021, he's done Harvest Moon, One World, and currently working on the soundtrack for Harvest Moon, The Windows of Anthos. So I haven't played any of the recent Harvest Moon games, but...
No, Brian, this is not the time to get into it, but now it is a shell of its former self. If you want Harvest Moon, you want the Story of Seasons games. There was a whole licensing thing. Basically,
that's right. I remember this now.
Search that on your own time, listeners. But yes,
oh my God, there was
Seasons.
A huge thing around this too.
Yeah, I mean, music's music. So even if the games aren't as good or as the Story of Seasons games, I'm sure that he's got some great work on the newer games. But
I'm sure the soundtracks are great. So
I wanted to go back and mention one thing that you didn't go over. I looked at his credits, and he worked on the KO Flying Squadron games, which were. I'll just simplify it by saying I remember they got a lot of buzz in the early days of game importing, like when people were still swapping anime VHS tapes at their local anime clubs. KO Flying Squadron was one of those games that just
I have it for Saturn.
Yeah. So he worked on the first two games. I don't know if there were more, but it's one of those like, oh, hey, I know that game. Maybe.
He's done many, many more.
Oh, for sure.
I tried to make this list as simple as possible.
That one stuck out to me because it's one of those games that I think people would probably point out as, oh, I recognize that game from some of his earlier credits. And
only people listening to this podcast.
Well, we'll see. Maybe somebody in the comments on our YouTube. But anyway, let's move along.
True. Yeah, we got another track here. This is Into Blue, Stage 2 Sea Colony. So let's take a listen, and we'll be right back. That was Into Blue, Stage 2 Sea Colony, composed by Tsukasa Tawada for Plus Alpha.
Immediately getting some Kirby's Dream Land vibes from that one.
Okay.
Especially that first part. I really like that little turnaround towards the very end. It's a little bit like almost a completely different character from the rest of the track right before it loops.
Every song in the soundtrack is so much fun because it's so different. So let's take a listen to the next track here. This is Bird Island from Stage 3, Flower Town.
That was the track Bird Island for Stage 3 Flower Town from the game Plus Alpha. What a bop.
If that was not the cutest song you've ever... I looked over and I see a big smile on your face when that started.
Oh, yeah. You said the previous track was Sonic or whatever. This one is Sonic. Right here.
I know.
Spring Yard Zone or whatever. This one completely slipped me by. I've known about Tsukasa Tawada for a while, but I'm a busy guy. I haven't gone back and listened to his entire gamography, but this one's really good for such an early soundtrack.
It is so good. And I was going through I think I was browsing through VGM rips during the day. Sometimes I'll just hit random, and this came up and I'm like, oh, I know the soundtrack. So I listened through it and I was like, oh man, you know what, this is really good. The whole soundtrack is so unique. Each track, there's the cutesiness vibe, there's the more menacing stuff. We should totally talk about it. It's only 10 minutes long, so this will be a short episode. The sound hardware, so obviously popular in the arcade in the 80s. We got the YM2151, the OPM 8-channel FM with 4 operators on each channel. And then this is combined with 2, actually, of the Oki chips. One, I believe, is primarily used for sound effects and, like voices and stuff like that. So we don't really hear that used during the soundtrack. But one of them is used entirely for the percussion. Mm-hmm. And so because the Oki, the M6295, also known as the MSM 6295, I was right, is a 4-channel 80 PCM sound chip. So again, you're going to be hearing it with the percussion, make it sound a lot more lifelike, and you'll notice that going forward. This is a sample of just that last track percussion.
You can really tell. I mean, the percussion on that, well, the whole soundtrack, but in this track, just sounds really, just rich. I mean, in those days, you pretty much had to pay for an expensive extra sound chip to get samples that good. But it works.
And really, the YM2151 by itself is an incredible chip. It was revolutionary and had really great capabilities. But something with the, combination, whenever you mix it up with something else, it just turns into that much more special. By itself, it's a powerful chip. But when you add in 4 channels of 80 PCM, you really have a lot to play with. So anyways, that said, ready to jump into our next track here?
I think so. What have we got coming up next?
So this is called Sun Colors from Stage 4, Snow Country. All right, that was Stage 4 from Plus Alpha, Sun Colors, and this plays during Snow Country, composed by Tsukasa Tawada.
Jun Ishikawa is hastily writing down notes. I'm hearing a lot of Kirby in this one too, but honestly, I'm really impressed by, this is his second soundtrack.
Yeah. I believe it's first on the arcade too.
Yeah. I was actually, Brian was looking at me. He's like, is everything all right? I was trying hastily to see if I could listen to his first soundtrack really quickly to see if I could hear any tunes, because if you're already this good by the second one, like, what are you doing? So his first game was a game called Druid on the NES, which I'd never heard of. But honestly, that part at 40 seconds or so, man, the stereo panning just sounds so good and kind of a waste on the arcades, honestly.
It's so good, right? We got another track here. This is called Last Heart. It's from Stage 5, Sand City. That was Last Heart, Stage 5, Sand City, composed by Tsukasa Tawada.
This one's got a few of the more, I'll call them cheesy FM patches compared to some of the other tracks.
I was going to say it's very Kraftwerky, but like, I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's got some cheesiness too, but it's a fun track.
Yeah, I meant more the patches. The composition's pretty straightforward, but, you know, some of the horn sounds are a little bit like, yeah, that's an FM synth.
I don't want to talk too much about the game. It's pretty simplistic. We already mentioned the lead characters are two girls, Celia and Rumi, and they pilot 3 different ships that you can fire different weapons across, you know, a few different levels. There's power-ups and stuff to make your weapons kind of change, and it also changes the effects of your bombs. The graphics themselves are just incredible. 1989, they look really good, very bright, colorful, very anime style. There's some really cool digital voice samples that I mentioned earlier that you hear kind of as you play. And, you know, the game is just well designed. There's one thing, though, that drives me crazy, and it's super hard. Not so much in the beginning, but it's one-shot death. And so it's a challenge to get through. I mean, if you play Arcade Archives and you got save states, then yeah, maybe you're fine. But try to play it on, you know, MAME or something without save states, and you'll hate yourself.
I thought you were going to say because there's no unnecessary organic H.R. Giger level in this one.
Well,
for once.
I mean, yeah, for once, Jaleco, you know, they diverge a little bit.
I think I said this once before on the show, but I love Jaleco because they're sort of like really high quality knockoffs. Like, their games are often just like maybe a level or two down below, you know, your Natsume or, you know, whatever. Like, they're still solid games, but there's a little bit like, I feel like I've seen this or played this before.
And
like,
because you definitely have, because I'm sure everybody in their department's like, what game are you playing in the arcade right now? All right, just do that one next.
But no, it does look really cool. Like, from what I've seen of it, it's a short game. Can beat it in about 20 to 30 minutes. It's a pretty standard, I guess, shmup for the era. But on the whole, it seems like a fun time. I mean, I'm never all that great at shmups, but I would definitely give this one a try.
Oh yeah, it is really fun. It is a good game, worth going back to too. I mean, the one-shot kill thing, you know,
pretty standard, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's just how they are. Anyways, we have another track here. This is from Stage 7, Eden, and the track's called Neo Baroque. All right, that was Neo Baroque, Stage 7, Eden, composed by Tsukasa Tawada. It's like a 15-second loop, but it's pretty cool.
Hey, man, it worked for Daft Punk. So, you know, it is a very fitting title, right? Neo Baroque. it's very
that's
much
what it is.
what they're going for. It's a cool little track. I feel like it was really hard for composers to do classical back in these days, so they kind of just like did it halfway. Like they didn't write out, like you can't really do a full classical composition in a video game style. It's got to be a little bit more like a dance tune.
Yeah, it's got to work for the arcade.
Yeah.
Our next track here is called, well, it's just the boss stage. So let's take a listen. All right, that was the boss stage track composed by Tsukasa Tawada. And we kind of go into this little Castlevania realm, and this jumps right in there.
And then it jumps to the triumphant and all those silly timpani hits.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Dude, it's a cool track.
It's a fun
cool
boss
track.
tune. Yeah.
We have another track here. This is the Unused track, Harmonica for Peace. Let's take a listen.
That was the Unused track called Harmonica for Peace. Is this a golf game? Did we just
sure
change
sounds like
genre?
Sure sounds like it. And then, he's like, I got all these patches that I made for this game we never used. I'm just going to throw them into one track. Try it all out.
It's one of the longer tracks, too. I mean, not like longer, like really, but some of the longer level themes are about a minute long, and this is too. So it's kind of like, I'm wondering where it would have ended up, actually. It probably, I feel like it got squeezed out because level 6, which we didn't play, is kind of a short tune. And it's more like dramatic. And it doesn't really make sense as one of the last 2 stages. It's like, well, I already wrote all the like breezy, easy music in the first 3 or 4 stages. It'll just be in the ROM chip somewhere.
Yeah. Somebody will find it one day. In this lengthy installment of Pixelated Audio, we covered Plus Alpha from the Mega System 1 arcade machine composed by Tsukasa Tawada. If you want to know more about the show, you can check us out online at pixelatedaudio.com for the show notes and the track list. We're also on Discord, so join our server there and join the fun.
Yeah, we have new people joining us all the time and talking about their favorites. And, I've really been enjoying this series we've been doing lately of just like getting some short shows out there and not trying to put too much pressure on it. They've been a lot of fun. I've been hearing some soundtracks that I've never, listened to or really gone through. So this has been a lot of fun.
Exactly the point, right?
Yeah.
Like we tend to focus on something that we know will fill the time, and also just requires a lot more granularity and stuff. So these really short, under 5-10 minute long soundtracks are perfect for this, for us just to kind of explore and listen to some tunes together. So a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
If you like the show, we'd appreciate you checking out our Patreon. Really appreciate anything you want to throw our way. It always goes to server costs and goes right back into the show. So check that out if you want to help support us. Otherwise, just listen to our past shows. We have a bunch of stuff that we've done recently. Some of these shorter episodes, if you like the format. We did Solstice. What did we do before that?
What did we do before that? I'm already forgetting, actually. I
put it out so fast.
I know. We
Are you
ran
looking
through
it up?
so quickly.
Really?
Yes, I am looking it up.
Both forget?
We did Bomb Jack, of course.
Oh, Bomb Jack. That's
Alberto Jose Gonzalez. How could I forget? Yeah, we've been on a bit of a European composer kick lately, although
This breaks the cycle.
Yeah, that breaks the cycle. We're back to Japan. We'll come back. Don't worry. Commodore 64, Amiga, ZX Spectrum, folks. We'll
do you justice.
Get you your due. Yeah. And actually, speaking of the Patreon, we are on our way to Game Sound Con. By the time this episode goes live, we will have already been there. So we are going to be talking to some really cool folks down in Southern California. And we're hoping to get some cool shows out of it, meet some really awesome people, say hello to our president of video games, Brian Schmidt, one of our favorite podcast guests, and lots of other cool people there. We're going to hopefully see Mason Lieberman and a lot of these newer game composers. I don't know. It's just I'm not really sure. At the time of this recording, I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out, but I'm assuming it's going to be a lot of fun.
We probably shouldn't be recording a show when we're supposed to wake up in a few hours to get our flight.
Whoops.
But, oh well. We got one last track taking out the show here. This is the ending theme. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you back shortly for the next episode.